In 1898, a struggling writer published a novel about the largest ship ever built. Unsinkable, they called it. On an April night in the North Atlantic, it hits an iceberg, and there aren't enough lifeboats. He named the ship the Titan. 14 years later, a real ship, the Titanic, sank almost exactly the same way. Same ocean, same month, same lie about being unsinkable. One coincidence you can laugh off, but it keeps happening. A film about a nuclear meltdown released 12 days before a real one. A TV pilot about a plane flown into the World Trade Center aired 6 months before September 11th. A cartoon that named a future president 16 years early. Some people think this is coincidence. Others think it's a message. And a few think it's something far more deliberate, that we are being shown the future on purpose. The only question is who's holding the pen. The feeling has a name. It's called predictive programming. And the term was coined in the late 1990s by a Scottish-Canadian researcher named Alan Watt. Watt's definition was specific and unsettling. He called it a subtle form of psychological conditioning provided by the media to acquaint the public with planned societal changes to be implemented by our leaders. Read that again. Not entertainment, conditioning. The claim is that movies, television, and books are not just reflecting our world, they're softening us up for it. That somewhere, someone already knows what's coming and is quietly seeding it into fiction first. And the logic, if you follow it, is almost elegant. You don't roll out a frightening change all at once. A new war, a new surveillance system, a new pandemic, because people panic. Instead, you show it to them as a story, again and again. Until, when it finally arrives in real life, some part of their brain shrugs and says, "I've seen this before. This is normal." The theory says fear is the enemy, and familiarity is the cure. Program the audience, and they'll accept the sequel. It's a genuinely disturbing idea. So let's do what almost nobody does with it. Let's actually look at the evidence, the real cases, and then look at what your own mind is doing while you watch them. Start with that ship. The novel was called Futility by a former sailor named Morgan Robertson. His fictional Titan was 800 feet long, the largest afloat, deemed practically unsinkable, and carried too few lifeboats for the souls aboard. The real Titanic matched nearly every detail. When people called Robertson a prophet, he flatly refused the title. He said he simply knew ships, the trends in size, the speed, the arrogance of the industry. He wasn't seeing the future. He was reading the present and drawing the obvious line forward. Remember that answer. We'll come back to it. 1979. Hollywood releases The China Syndrome, a thriller about a near catastrophe at a nuclear power plant and the people who try to cover it up. 12 days later, on March 28th, the 3 Mile Island reactor in Pennsylvania partially melts down. The worst commercial nuclear accident in American history. The film was still in theaters. Life didn't just imitate art. It caught up to it in under 2 weeks. March 4th, 2001. A spin-off of The X-Files called The Lone Gunmen airs its very first episode. The plot, a rogue faction inside the US government secretly takes control of a passenger jet by remote and aims it at the World Trade Center. The goal in the story is to fake a terrorist attack and start a profitable war. 6 months later, 2 real planes hit those same towers. The episode was so close to what happened that most of the people who made it were afraid to ever mention it again. March 2000, The Simpsons airs an episode set in the future, where Lisa Simpson becomes president and inherits a broken country from the president before her. That president? Donald Trump. 16 years before the 2016 election. The line was almost a throwaway joke. It didn't feel like a joke in 2017. And then there's 2011's Contagion, a novel virus, jumping from a bat, spreading across the planet, quarantine, social distancing, a desperate race for a vaccine. 9 years later, in 2020, the world lived it, almost beat for beat, down to the language. People rewatched that film during lockdown and felt like they were watching a documentary made a decade early. And it doesn't stop with disasters. Enemy of the State, 1998. Person of Interest, 2011, a program that watches everyone through every camera and phone. 2 years after that show premiered, a contractor named Edward Snowden walked out with proof that the real government was doing almost exactly that. 5 films, 5 direct hits. So is the theory right? Here's where we turn the camera around and point it at you. Because the theory has one fatal blind spot. It only counts the hits. Think about how many movies, shows, novels, and comics have ever been made. Millions, each one packed with invented events, dates, disasters, and technologies. With that many guesses, a handful matching reality isn't a miracle. It's a statistical certainty. We just never make a video about the 10,000 films that predicted nothing. We only remember the Titan. This is called survivorship bias. You're staring at the winners of a lottery and forgetting the losers were ever in the draw. Then there's what happens after the event. Once the towers fall, once the virus spreads, your brain reaches backward and connects the dots, and it feels like the dots were always connected. Psychologists call it hindsight bias, the sense that you knew it all along. You didn't. Nobody flagged that Lone Gunmen episode as a warning on March 5, 2001. It only became a prophecy on September 12th. And underneath both of those is the oldest wiring we have. The human brain is a pattern machine. It would rather see a face in the dark than miss a threat. So it finds signal in noise, meaning in coincidence, in tension where there was only chance. Scientists call it apophenia. It kept our ancestors alive. And it's the exact same instinct that makes a random cartoon joke feel like a coded prophecy. Which brings us back to Morgan Robertson and what he told everyone. He wasn't psychic, he just understood where ships were going. That's the whole secret. Good science fiction isn't prophecy, it's extrapolation. Writers study the direction the world is already moving and sprint 10 years ahead of it. Surveillance was expanding, so of course a show imagined total surveillance. Pandemics were overdue, epidemiologists had been screaming it for years, and the makers of Contagion hired one of them. They didn't see the future. They read the present more honestly than the rest of us wanted to. So we can close the case. It's all coincidence in psychology. Not quite. Because here's the part the skeptics rush past, and it's the most uncomfortable part of all. The core idea underneath predictive programming, that fiction can quietly shape what a society will accept, it's just true. Reputations rate of the deliberate road accepts imfavorable stories written for a story. Repeat an image often enough. That's not a secret cabal. And on the other side, the warning side, that's real too. When George Orwell wrote about total surveillance, he wasn't leaking a plan. It works. He was sounding an alarm. Advertisers pay to fiction is a flare and is a warning to America. The best dystopia in the question still, we reach it, hoping we'll change course before real answer. Movies do condition us through ordinary propaganda and advertising, not a hidden hand. Not a hidden hand. And movies do warn us through artists paying attention. What there's no evidence for is the thing in the middle. A single group, seeding specific future events into scripts as a countdown. The mundane truth is stranger. We don't need a conspiracy to program us, we do it to ourselves, one story at a time. So let's go back to that unsinkable ship. Maybe the reason our stories keep coming true isn't that someone is writing our future. Maybe it's that we keep writing down our fears, the meltdown, the attack, the plague, the watching eye. And then, slowly, we walk straight toward them. The screen was never a window into what they have planned for us. It's a mirror, showing us what we already are and where we're already headed. The next time a movie seems to predict the future, don't ask how the writers knew. Ask why we keep telling ourselves the same warning over and over, until one day it stops being fiction. Prediction isn't magic. Sometimes it's just paying attention. And sometimes it's a choice we haven't made yet. This was The Hidden Signal. Subscribe, we read the screen so you can see what's really on it. And tell me in the comments, which of these gave you the chills? The ship, the pilot, or the virus? Because I've got a list of the ones we didn't have time for. And some of them haven't come true yet.